Hi there. Welcome to another Wildlife Wednesday. Today we're going to be observing some of the birds that come around the nature center here. So typically during a normal year we would do what's called breakfast with the birds, and people come down here to the nature center and they get some hot beverage and a little booklet, and they sit down and we watch the birds out here come to the bird feeders and kind of identify different species. We talk about what different birds are coming, when they come, where they come from, and we're doing a little bit differently this year though, of course, because of COVID and because the nature center is under renovation. So today it's just going to be Jacob and I, and we're going to look at some of the birds out here and just talk about a few and tell you what we know. So a lot of the birds that we're going to be seeing come to the bird feeders here are from the order of birds known as passeriforms. And that is over half of all bird species. And this is kind of what you would think of as a songbird or a perching bird. And we'll see different birds at different times of year. But right now, a lot of the birds that we've been getting are the black-capped chickadees. And they're the smaller bird. You can tell they've got the black top of their head there. And they actually eat about 20 times more seed in the winter than they do during the summer. That's because they need to sustain a good healthy fat reserve to keep them warm in the wintertime. Bird feeders are especially important too during the winter, because once we get snowfall like this, it's a lot more difficult for birds to be able to find food. Their foraging habits become a lot more limited.
Now, as we look out here at the bird feeders, there's almost this pecking order of sorts that kind of goes on. As we look out here, there's a lot of songbirds, a lot of small birds. But any time that a larger bird comes in, smaller birds will usually defer to that larger bird and allow that larger bird, such as a blue jay or a red-bellied woodpecker, to then take over their spot and take the seed. So right now we have a couple of blue jays that are sitting in the back there. And if they decided that they felt comfortable enough to come up to the feeders and they wanted to feed, they would take the spot of any of these black-capped chickadees or these juncos or anything that's around, just as this one did over here. It landed on this suet block that's here, and as it landed on the suet block, all the other birds in the surrounding area made sure to leave, because blue jays are some of the biggest and baddest birds around here. But one thing that is very interesting is that the only bird that a blue jay will kind of not feel comfortable around is a red-bellied woodpecker, which is a moderately large woodpecker. Not the largest. The largest would be a pileated, but the largest that comes to a bird feeder like this, at least commonly, would be a red-bellied woodpecker. As I was talking just there were two blue jays sitting on the bird feeders there, and a red-bellied woodpecker came in and dove at those two blue jays, and one of the blue jays scared off, and the other one just kind of flinched a little bit, but it seemed to be kind of a mock charge of sorts. But there's a little tiny quarrels that kind of go on between the birds here, and you can definitely see there's different there's a hierarchy for these birds that goes on, and definitely a very cool kind of little showing of how these birds interact with each other in such a close area such as these bird feeders.
In the bowl here, we got a dark-eyed junco. And juncos are strictly a winter bird as well. They normally feed down on the ground, but this guy, you can see him in the bowl there. He's really digging the seeds, the bowl seed. And they actually flock in a pretty large pack, so they'll come to the feeders in groups of 8, 10, 12, and generally roost together too in the same areas. At the green feeder there, we have a what I believe is a downy woodpecker. And so out of the birds that aren't really songbirds, passeriforms, that'll come to the feeders, we'll see a lot of woodpeckers and then mourning doves. And woodpeckers are in their own family of bird, Pickidae. And we have about 5 species of woodpecker around here, although we really generally only see a couple that come to the feeders, and that's going to be the downy woodpecker and the red-bellied woodpecker. Another bird that we see commonly out here, especially once it gets to be wintertime, are cardinals. And you can easily tell the male cardinal from the female cardinal. The male's got that real bright red plumage. And the females kind of have that duller sheen. And cardinals are typically the first bird to arrive at the feeder in the morning and the last bird to leave. They spend a lot of time. They're patient feeders, and they've got that real thick, large, sturdy beak that they use. They mostly go for some of the harder seeds. So another type of bird we get around here a lot during this time of year are nuthatches. And there are two species of nuthatch that we commonly see here in Wisconsin. There's the red-breasted and the white-breasted nuthatch. The red-breasted is a little bit smaller, and each of these inhabit different ecological niches. So what an ecological niche is an animal there's a very specified habitat that all these birds kind of live in, whether it's they like to roost in old animal holes and conifer trees or deciduous trees. They like to build their old nest or use old nests from other birds. And so red-breasted nuthatches are generally smaller, and they roost up in kind of knots of trees where animals used to live. And one of the cool things about both species of nuthatch actually is that they can walk vertically up and down the wall, and not a lot of other birds do this, so they can kind of hang on to the sides of the beams of the post here, or the sides of things, and they get their name nuthatch because what they'll do is they're also a grab and go feeder. They've got that long beak, and they take a seed and kind of hatch it against whatever surface they're standing on in order to open up that hard exterior of the shell and get the rich nutrients inside.
Well, thank you for joining James and I for this absolutely lovely December morning where we talked about all the birds that come to the bird feeders and just kind of the dynamics between the birds at the bird feeders. I hope before I see you next time on the next Wildlife Wednesday, you get outside, you have a moment of peace in nature, you find some solace within the natural world. Alrighty, and I will see you on the next installment of Wildlife Wednesday.